Hello everyone and welcome to Dragonstance. In this video I will talk about the 8 most powerful dragon type Pokemon that adhere to my criteria, also taking into account its usefulness in the competitive. To make this top I will not take into account legendary Pokemon, and neither Mega Evolutions, because it would become too predictable especially in the first positions. Dragon types have always been considered the most powerful type of the 18 inches existence. In the first generation we do not have the opportunity to see this type in all our adventure, only when we face the last member of the Elite Four. We know the existence of this type, considered as sacred and mystical, statistically about to the rest, difficult to train and competitively very powerful to the point of including in the 6th generation the fairy type to slightly balance the strengths and weaknesses in the type table. Until then we're weak twice in the same dragon type, making attacks like Outrage no longer be so overpowered, although they are still powerful. They have a lot of resistances to types like, for example, the 3 basic ones: Fire, Water and Grass, which gave you to think that this type was really made to be the most favorable, due to none of the 3 possible initials to choose, who are one of the most powerful Pokemon in the region, and specials Pokemon to the player, can strive him in a neutral way by their natural types. Also say that as a general rule they stand out for a fairly high physical attack and a good speed, coming from the Dragon Dance movement that increases 1 level these 2 statistics. Let's start with the top. Number 8. The pseudo-legendary introduced in the 6th generation and of pure dragon type, Goodra, occupies the 8th place, which undoubtedly stands out of this Pokemon as its special defense of 150 base, which places it almost to the same height as legendaries like Goodra and Ho-Oh in that section, and thanks to the assault vest on this side can be almost impenetrable. At the same time this Pokemon possesses what I think is an underestimated special attack of 110 base, being able to reach about 350 inches total at level 100, surpassing in this aspect Pokemon that at first sight seems that they have much more like Charizard, Typhlosion or Starmie. His physical attack is not left behind being of 100 base. All of this coupled with a wide variety of attacks you learn like Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Power Whip, Dragon Pulse, Draco Meteor, Sludge Wave etc. make it quite dangerous and unpredictable. However, as negative points and the reason why it is not higher in this top, despite being a stole legendary with 600 base points, first, Goodra's physical defense is quite normal, and second and most important according to my opinion, it combines a base speed of 80 that is lower than the average in its category, with the fact that it has no movement of recovery or boost, so that cannot exploit that incredible special defense beyond objects as leftovers or the assault vest. For this last reason above all is why I have placed in 8th place, being perhaps the least competitive of all the snow legendaries. Number 7. Another 6th generation Pokemon, belonging to the classic Dragon Flying type, X4 weak twice type, and also to the Dragon, Fairy and Rock types. Noivern is a Pokemon that leaves the classic prototype of a typical dragon with an impressive attack, to be what in my opinion is a bit slower dragon type Crepat, but with a much greater offensive capacity, reaching a base speed of 123 which gives an incredible 379 maximum to level 100. All this is quite interesting and very useful in the competitive as well. That, let's face it, one of the few weaknesses that have the dragon type is against themselves, and Noivern is the dragon type Pokemon with the best base speed of this and, correct me if I am wrong, but also is the fastest counting even Mega Evolutions and Legendaries, and knowing that the dragon type is effective against itself, it could be said that the first one that hits is the one that wins. In this way, we could also say that Noivern would win any dragon Pokemon in a versus, or minimum that would leave the advantage versus any dragon. To this must be added a fairly decent special attack of base 97, access to Roost and attacks like Dragon Pulse, Boomburst, Dark Pulse or Draco Meteor, not forgetting that thanks to his ability Noivern can hit without taking into account the screens and substitutes, which is very useful. All this makes me a unique Pokemon for a dragon type and quite flexible in its use, deserving the 7th place. Number 6. One of the most iconic dragons of the 1st generation of Pokemon is left with the 6th place, a Pokemon that already in 1st generation had traits of a dragon type Pokemon in spite of being only of the water type. He turned in Jetta in the last Pokemon of the last gym leader of the region. We are talking about Kyngdra, that with Galano and Hoenn would be our last obstacle before fighting for the championship. Water and Dragon as dual type, pretty good, that gives very good coverage to types and covers many weaknesses, only being weak to the same dragon type and fairy type too. This balanced combination of types is accompanied by balanced stats, without highlighting in a remarkable way in anything, but without being weak in anything either, following almost the statistical rhythm of Pokemon Cell to have 95 base stats and 4-bit statistics to give a total of 540 base stats, at the same level as Gyarados or Lapras. The reason that makes Kyngdra in the 6th position is, above all, his ability, Swift Swim, that multiplies your speed by 2 inches a rainy climate. A Kyngdra under the rain is one of the most lethal Pokemon ever, striking with stat water-type moves, plus 50% power by rain plus 30% of the life orb if you equip it. Added to that, Kyngdra will always move first unless another Pokemon is faster in rain, makes that it can sweep entire teams alone so much by the physical side as by the special side, although Hydro Pump could be considered his best offensive move. It is also mentioned the access to Dragon Dance in the secondary ability Sniper, that along with Focus Energy and the Periscope can focus the strategy on the use of critics, which is also very interesting, especially if it is combined with Draco Meteor due to the critics do not take into account the changes and negative statistics for the user. All in all, a classic and balanced Dragon-type Pokemon that deserves a place in this list. Number 6. Number 5. The region of Alola included several changes in the competitive world, highlighting the movement Z, the Ultra Beasts and its exotic statistics, or the improved Leech Life move. The respective pseudo-legendary as you would expect was Dragon-type as almost always except Metagross and Hoenn and Meteor and Johto. Kommo-o is the dual dragon fighting type, a combination that can turn out quite interesting. At first, it is resistant to Stealth Rock, and fighting type moves allow you to hit proficiently several types, especially Steel and Ice types that normally suppose a problem for a dragon. It is perhaps the Stow legendary with more balanced statistics, being good both defensive and offensively, with a 85 speed base stat that is not bad, as well as good abilities like Sound Puff and Bulletproof that make it immune to several important movements. It has Dragon Dance to boost up easily thanks to its good defenses, although it doesn't do as much damage as other dragons like Salamence or Tyrantrum that possess better physical attacks. However, despite everything said, occupies the 5th place. In any other type of Pokemon types would have been a top 3 surely. However, there are other Dragon-type Pokemon with similar powers and even better than Kommo-o. I have decided to put it in 5th place because it has no brutal attacks that can eliminate the enemy in a move, no recovery movements that take advantage of its good defensive capacity. This Pokemon is good at everything, but not excellent at all, and therefore occupies the 5th place. Number 4. From this point in my opinion is when we take a little jump in level, and any of the 4 Pokemon I'm going to talk about could have finished in the first place, differentiating the positions by arguments and also by a part of personal preference. This time, the 4th place is carried by the 5th generation Stow legendary, for many one of the most complicated rivals to win in a Pokemon game. We are talking about Hydreygon, the Lerna's Hydra of Greek mythology converted in Pokemon, the star Pokemon of Ghechis that surprised many of us in one of the best finals ever in a Pokemon game. With powerful and varied special attacks, what can be said of this Pokemon? Is the first Stow legendary dragon and Snow legendary in general to have like remarkable statistic, the special attack being 125 base, giving a total of 383 points at level 100, with a good offensive combination of Dragon and Dark types, and attacks like Dragon Pulse, Accurate Wave, Surf, Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, Flamethrower, Fire Blast or even Iron Tail or Superpower on the physical side. A surprise, this Pokemon is an offensive machine, and if you played Pokemon White or Black you will know what I'm talking about. His defensive stats are not lower than 90, which is quite good considering his offensive capacity. It also has Roost as a recovery movement that is usually used to recover the damage of the life orb. I decided to put it in 4th position partly by the inclusion of the Fairy type, against which Hydreygon anything can do. Because of it is weak for form, the Fairy type stands out precisely because of its high special defense. If it is true that thanks to Iron Tail and its also good physical attack can defend itself, although usually a Hydreygon uses its special attack. But the main reason is its base speed of 98, being below base 100, which is where usually it decided who attacks first and who doesn't. Having base 100 or more is very important, and more inoffensive Pokemon like Hydreygon, this point, above all, make me place it in 4th place. Number 3. Position 3 is, of course, another stone legendary. In this case, Salamence opens the podium of this type. To start, has a formidable physical attack of 135 base stat, which gives a maximum of 405 points at level 100, combining it with a base speed of 100 and a special attack of 110. It is an attack machine that you don't know where it's going to come, having attacks like Dragon Claw, Outrage, Iron Tail or Earthquake by the physical side and Fire Blast, Hydro Pump, Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse by the special side. Although being honest, with Fire Blast and Outrage, it's enough to destroy 90% of the cases. To this is added access to Dragon Dance, Roost and Refresh. He's one of those Pokemon of which you have to be penning at all times. A Dragon Dance can eliminate an entire team. It really has everything to be a competitive beast, with all kinds of movements, a good ability and big base stats. Perhaps its only weak points are damaged by 2 to Stealth Rocks and a base speed that being only a little higher could compete with almost any legendary. But Salamence can also serve as an extraordinary defensive Pokemon, with Intimidation and the Rocky Helmet or Leftovers as a physical wall quite difficult to tear down, while at the same time can do significant damage. The amount of combinations and strategies that can be done with Salamence can hardly be done with others, and it's one of those Pokemon that you feel that only putting 4 attacks to him, an object and a ability, you are wasting much of what could be done with these Pokemon. Deserved post 3. Number 2. What can we say about number 2? If there is a Pokemon that is made for the competitive, this one is Garchomp. It is everything. A dual ground dragon type that makes it resistant to trap rocks and allows him to hit also with Earthquake by stab. Variety of movements including Fire Blast on the special side, that does a lot of damage to Pokemon like Skarmory, Skizzer and Ferrothorn that on the physical side are more resistant. A base speed of 102 that marks much the differences, adding it to the previously said, and brutal statistics, with a high attack and more health points than Pokemon like Ho-Oh or Goodra, while defending well, makes for the first time, remove a non-legendary Pokemon of overused and place it in Ubers with all the legendaries, competing face-to-face against Meteor, Goodra, Pelkey etc., and to the surprise of many, Garchomp managed to make a hole in that category, something unpublished. If we stick strictly to the competitive potential, it probably deserves the rank 1 in this type, coming to be considered as the best stone legendary of all, a Pokemon that for me strikes quite well with a champion center, one of the most powerful. As main attacks we find Outrage, Dragon Claw, Fire Fang, Swords Dance, Stealth Rock and serve as defensive Pokemon. Equipping it with a Rocky Helmet and EVs in defense and HP can be very annoying, but mainly and what differentiates it from other dragons a part of its speed is that it has Earthquake for stab. This allows him to strike quite well to types that are usually choked to the dragons like the Steel or Fairy. At the same time that is a rather better attack than Dragon Claw or Dragon Pulse. In some cases with the same precision it is between 15 and 20% more damage. As the only negative point I will say that its special attack is not so high, being of 80, which makes it offensively predictable by the physical side. We could talk about Garchomp all the day, but we are not going to extend the video too much, just end up saying that it is one of the most feared Pokemon and in the tier where it is presented can do wreckage. Before revealing the first place, I am obliged to give 2 honorable mentions of this type, which are Tyrantrum and Haxorus, 2 Pokemon with an extraordinary offensive potential and that I honestly have cause to leave them out. Mainly are not in this top in the case of Haxorus, because I see it too fragile and a speed that does not reach 100 of base. In the case of Tyrantrum its speed is quite back, and in the joint case of the 2, none has great variety of attacks beyond its stabs compared to the members of this type, but I repeat offensively they are one of the best and very good options. Without delay, let's see what is the first place in this top. Number 1. First of all, I admit that, in part, I have been carried away by the nostalgia and by personal preferences to choose the first place, the first Dragon-type Pokemon, which started all in Pokemon Red and Blue back in 1996 and since then is still one of the most competitive Pokemon there may be, as it also has enough arguments to put it in the first place. It is for me the dragon per excellence and my favorite Pokemon, represents what means being a strong and draconic Pokemon at the same time. We are talking about Dragonite, the last dragon that we should overcome before fighting for the championship in the first Pokemon League, the only one in the first generation able to overcome the invincible Mewtwo in 3 different statistics: physical attack, physical defense and special defense. Talking about their stats, started with today's known as stone legendaries, sacred and very characteristic Pokemon, difficult to train and can evolve, reaching their last form in high levels. Unlike the legendary ones, who are powerful themselves, they must train themselves, but their power once trained is out of any Pokemon of the region and almost to the height of the best of the legendaries. The satisfaction and sensation of superiority that gave you train your Dragonite in Pokemon Fire Red and Green Leaf, and get to raise it to level 55, was even superior to the capture of Articuno, Zapdos and ultras. It cost a lot to train him, but when you hit it was noticeable that was a different Pokemon, even different from a legendary. Dragonite inaugurated those 600 of base stat, already classics. With a physical attack of 134, reaching 403 points to level 100 only, surpassed in 2 points for Salamence in this type, and then the rest of their statistics are very even with 100 inches special attack, 95 inches physical defense and 91 points in health. His weakest point is apart from the eyes like any dragon, its base speed of 80, and seeing that the fact that has decanted the seats from the 4th place has been practically the speed, is illogical that Dragonite is here with those 80 base and speed, however, as something that none of the members of this type is, and as a variety of possible movements and options almost unlimited. The amount of strategies that can be done with this Pokemon are innumerable. Can attack you with water, fire, electricity, flying, dragon and ice for both sides, the physical and a special side, and using the best movements of each type. Apart attacks like Roost, Thunder Wave, also Dragon Dance superpower or Earthquake and a priority like Extreme Speed, are a useful attack that can decide a battle in the last turn. Besides this, it has the Multichless ability, with which it will receive the half damage from any attack if it is at 100% of its life, and this is really interesting for many things, such as enduring dragon type or even ice type attacks without weakening and being able to counteract other dragons that surely eliminating at a stroke due to its enormous attack, to elaborate strategies like the weakness policy, or even to bump off with relative ease with Dragon Dance, for example. As we see, the variety that offers Dragonite is immense. You can get a Hydreygon and you know that it will be a special sweeper with at most some physical attack for Blissey, or a Garchomp and you know that it will be almost physical, but when you get a Dragonite until you make the first move you know nothing. If with Salamence we said that it was a waste that there were only 4 attacks to choose, with this Pokemon would be a waste even if there were 8 attacks to put. Dragonite, the first non-legendary Pokemon that impressed with its power to the point that I thought it could compete with Meteor, the standard bearer of a first Pokemon League in which we didn't know how things worked or how it would be, showing the maximum power that could be reached at that time without genetic experiments, naturally, in a first generation that gave birth more than 20 years ago, for all it represents, for my post one of all Dragon-type Pokemon. Well, that was all. I invite you to leave your opinion in the box of comments on what would be your top 8. See you soon in next videos.